Welcome to the BC Assembly of First Nations Youth Podcast. I'm BCAFN Youth Representative Justen Peters.
And I'm Taylor Behn-Tsakoza. Thanks for tuning in. As part of a 5-part series, we have launched the podcast to talk about pressing issues and interests for First Nations youth in British Columbia, while hosting various emerging Indigenous youth leaders to talk about the work they are doing in their communities and beyond.
We will be releasing bi-monthly broadcasts on a range of topics, which will be available via podcast on our BCAFN Facebook group or through audio on our BCAFN website.
Today's guest is Angell Olsen. She's a strong youth advocate in working to end youth homelessness in BC and has also just completed an internship with BIDEA on international development. Welcome, Angell.
And I'm actually in a course right now called Building Greener Futures, which is expanding the LGBTQ and Indigenous women into the construction area of work. So yeah, I'm very engaged in Indigenous stuff.
I can tell. That is amazing. I would love to hear more about that as we go through our questions. Yeah, that would be. I also work in green energy right now, so I would love to learn more.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, of course. We're really glad to have you. Can you tell our lovely audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Angell. I'm 28 years old. I have been with Away Home Kamloops for I think maybe like 5 years now. It might be a bit longer. I volunteered before that, and then I was hired on by Katherine as a youth advisor to help end youth homelessness. And I've been in quite a few projects since I've been working with them, and it's been a real joy and honor to be working for Away Home.
Cool. Yeah, Angell, we've met you through various BCAFN youth forums in the past, but also through the Coalition to End Youth Homelessness. Can you give our viewers a bit of background on the Coalition and the work that you do with them and how you came into that role?
Yeah, so the work I've been doing with the Coalition, some of the projects is I helped write a report on youth homelessness and the 13 key recommendations to end youth homelessness. And you can read it at www.awayhomekamloops.com, and it's a PDF you can download, and it has a dedication to Kathleen in there. She sadly passed away last December, and so it's been a year, and it was it really just brought the community closer, and it made us really rally together to end youth homelessness. The last camp out, we did it a week after she passed away, and we raised, how much was it again? It was like 100,000, maybe it was I don't know the actual number, so I don't want to like spitball, but it was definitely like 100,000. And then this year's, I think we raised 75,000, as well as, we launched the report, and it was a great honor to write it alongside my other youth advisors. And I highly suggest giving it a read. There's a lot of really good information in there, but make sure you have time to, because it's like over 90 pages long.
Who was Kathleen?
Katherine Mcfarlane was the executive director of Away Home Kamloops. She started it from the ground up, basically in an abandoned building, and started meeting there as she was a youth herself that experienced homelessness. And it slowly surged into the big organized nonprofit that it is now. Another project we worked on was Katherine's Place, which is what the camp out for last year was raising money for. And it's being built here on Tranquille. And it will have, I think, 27 beds. Don't quote me on that either, though.
A lot of beds.
Yeah, it's going to be like a big apartment building for youth, basically.
Cool. That's really good to hear.
And then
I guess while we're on the topic, I think it's really important that we have more capacity and room for youth aging out of care, and having community for youth, because a lot of young people, particularly First Nations youth, they're put into very dire straits and difficult situations if they if they don't have a place to live, really, it's either, you stick around your home for a very long time. It's really hard to make it out there in the world. But I find the biggest thing that youth need is like a sense of community and, a place like secure housing and whatnot. And I noticed that there's a lot of trauma that is attached to that with drug and alcohol use and whatnot. But I certainly see a vehicle or an opportunity for a path of healing through these homes for youth. So it's really cool that you're part of this work.
Thank you. Yeah, those are all very valid points. It's very sad the high rates of Indigenous people in the homeless community. In the youth focus group I just did, it shows in the data that, oops, sorry, I knocked my computer. It shows in the data that Indigenous peoples are 3 times higher than any other race for homelessness and experiencing insecure housing and poverty. And yeah. So I find it's very important to advocate and voice loudly how badly we need these supports for the Indigenous community. And we did 3 days of focus groups where we discussed the data. Oh, my cat. Where we discussed the data that was presented. And we're going to be writing a report with the data soon. Now that we have discussion, we did discussions. The first 2 days were with the youth, and then the third day was with service providers, and it was very impactful, and it was an honor to be a part of that. So we have more projects coming out for raising awareness on the cross-cutting issues of youth homelessness.
That's great. It's really great.
Yeah, you can definitely hear the passion for this work in your voice, Angell. It's really, yeah, I think it's a good feeling knowing that there's other young Indigenous people who are, doing this work. And I think that makes me feel good that, we have representation on these advisory boards and and also the coalition. I know Justen and I just got involved, but knowing like the wealth of experience and passion that you bring is really going to benefit those youth that really need it. So I raise my hands up to you for that. Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, Cooksham, for the compliment. It is an honor and a privilege to be a strong advocate for Indigenous peoples. I've been really passionate about youth homelessness since I was like really, really little, like too little to should like be even concerned about that. But I just remember always wanting to help people, and I always have, even if it was just making hot meals and bringing them out to random people, or like working for various nonprofits like you guys and Away Home. I even do a bit of fostering change when it was still going with Susan as the lead. So yeah, the more I can be integrated into the community to help people, like the more I want to give my services, because I feel like I have very valuable lived experience with overcoming a lot of things that I think a lot of youth would relate to, and it make them feel less alone. And that is just my goal.
Amazing. Well, you're well on your way to achieving that goal. And from talking with you before we started this, we learned that you actually have done international work. So it's amazing that you've are taking this now abroad and this passion for helping people. So you mentioned you completed this internship alongside other Indigenous youth on international development, which sounds super cool. And I'm so eager to hear about your experience. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I did a 3-month internship with VIDEA on international development. We worked on 3 cross-cutting issues, which was education, gender inequality, and government. And we basically just learned what happened to Canada happened to Zambia. The British colonizers came and reaped all the lands and the goods and the oils and took advantage of third world country basically. And so we raised awareness on those issues, as well as we did a conference where we did a workshop. It was such an amazing experience. If you are an Indigenous youth, I highly suggest signing up for the next one. We work along 15 other youth, as well as people who I'm still friends with today from Zambia. And it's just like incredible how much technology has advanced to allow us to work with people from all over the world. It was an honor and a privilege to listen to their culture, as well as share ours with them, and see the similarities in how we are just a very loving, like, I love Indigenous people. Like, they're some of the most accepting people I've come across. And the Zambian people were the exact same way. They're always smiling and dancing. And even though like they didn't have that much, they were so grateful for what they had. And just raising issues like, did you know their tuition is 11 Canadian dollars? Well, it might be like 13 Canadian because it's like 11 US. So a year. That's all it cost for their tuition. And most of them can't afford that. And it's just like raising awareness on these important issues, and while also relating to having similar ones here, was it like changed my life. I have gotten better at public speaking because of it. I am more confident in my skills and who I am as a person. The person who ran it, her name is Rachel. She really just empowered me to step into who I am becoming as decolonizing myself and just being a great advocate. And it was an amazing opportunity, and I would 100% like do something like that again. It sparked an interest I didn't know I had on international development. I never even like thought to think in there, but I saw it on my Facebook and I signed up for it, and it was amazing.
That's really cool. VIDEA, that stands for Victoria International Development Education Association, correct?
Yeah.
And they're based out of Victoria. I had a very similar experience. I went to Uganda through VIDEA back in 2015, and there were some correlations between the people there and Indigenous people, because I spent most of my time in a village called Kimbuye. It's really funny. They called it a village. And I asked, how many people live here? And they said 82,000. And I said, that's not a village. That's Kamloops. Like, that's a city.
Yeah.
But they called it a village just because of the infrastructure. Like, it was mostly brick huts and like brick stores that were like just boxes or whatever. What you brought up though is with the theme of colonization, is that a lot of the people in the village, they spoke their native language, but when they went to school, they were taught that like it was taught that they shouldn't be speaking their native language, and they were shamed for it or whatever. And so yeah, and it's just really interesting to get that comparison, because they seem more spiritually and emotionally healthy, at least from my experience, whereas we have material wealth and technology, and perhaps
they seemed like, this is going to sound a little like kooky of me, but it seems like detached from their ego. Whereas like with all the programming that we go through as a young person, like I feel like it's harder sometimes to be as humble as they are. Like, I don't know, they just have such a pure energy, and they're always just so happy and loving. It's like a bright light of like, just like kindness is all I can think of. Like, they're forever kind. There's never any ego or narcissism with them. It's just pure love, and that's one thing I really enjoyed about the internship. They really humbled me a lot in my own experiences of complaining.
They have a very strong faith.
Yes, and very strong. They're like, yeah, they were always dancing and singing, and they all loved gospel music. Like, they just loved to chant and be in a happy like vibration. So it was I actually got to see them. They did some for us, and it was amazing.
That's cool. So what is next for you in 2022? Are there any other issues that are important to you that you want to get involved with?
I think what I'm going to be doing next is getting into some schooling so I can further my education on some important issues. I'm not sure what I'm going to go to school for yet. I was thinking maybe I'll start with my community support worker certificate and go from there. But ideally, I would eventually like to get my social services degree. My sister has it, as well as just before Catherine passed, she just graduated her master's. So for her to be running a nonprofit at the successful rate it is while going to school at the same time is just like so inspiring and impactful. And I had already planned on doing it before that, but like she really inspired me to further look into that. Yeah.
That's awesome. You can definitely tell like the impact Catherine has had on you. I wish, yeah, like being part of the coalition, we hear her name every meeting, and just hearing her impact, it's really, yeah, I think I don't know, has opened my eyes to, the legacy that that is possible if you like, are passionate about something, that, those effects are felt like long after you're gone. So yeah, thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah, it's good to hear. I think like just hearing all your stories about working abroad, working in Kamloops and your dreams for the future, what is like at the heart of that? Like what motivates you to get involved in Indigenous youth advocacy?
I think being someone who is ending intergenerational trauma cycles, not a lot of people know this, but I've had a lot of grief and loss in my life. Both my parents are passed away, as well as my sister, and my mom and sister both being Indigenous, and losing their battles to addictions really just drives my whole trajectory in making sure there's more resources out there for people, because I know that if they had the resources that I had today, they might still be alive.
Absolutely. Wow, that's powerful. And I think sometimes this work can be draining, and really there's sad parts to it, but I think it's like that,
You have to really
that
create
fuel.
strong boundaries with a work like this, because it can be really hard to I always give the advice not to go into too much detail when talking about trauma, so you don't like re-traumatize yourself. But I'm always glad to share my story, and I've done a lot of healing on everything I talk about, so I don't bring anything up that would make me uncomfortable. Catherine taught me that. She always made sure we were safe in interviews. She was like, because she had a bad experience where her adopted family was calling her out on things, and even like victim blaming her story. And so she always made sure to make an example. She always told us that story and made sure that we were safe when it came to talking to like news medias and stuff. So I've had a lot of practice with safe interviewing as well. Yeah. I don't know, I brought that as a ramble, but
No, I feel like I needed to hear that today, so thank you.
Cool. So for youth who may not know how to get involved in advocacy, where would you recommend that they start?
I would start looking up nonprofits, and maybe if they have any volunteer programs, to start off there, as well as to keep an eye out for any positions that can be applied for. Usually on the Facebook pages of nonprofits, they'll post job positions that you can apply for. And really, I would just start signing up for any sort of like free youth courses. There's tons out there. I have taken entrepreneurship ones. I've taken ones where I've gotten microloans. I have done all sorts of different. I also believe there is a website. Oh, what is it called again? If I remember it, I'll bring it up. But there's a website that tells you and even on the government website, there's a couple like internships and stuff that youth can sign up for. I might be doing a another indigenous based, I think it's indigenous based, it's like an adventure. I think it's like river rafting, and I got it through the government site that I signed up for. So Googling internships and free courses would be my best guess. But yeah, I think I just got lucky. I think maybe I was just on a divine path that brought me to Katherine. So
Well, in my experience, I find if you come towards something with passion and just the drive, it tends to work out for you. So it
yeah.
seems like it's worked out for you. We're drawing near our time of our attention spans. We usually make this 20 or 30 minutes. So just like to say thank you so much for joining us today, and hearing this amazing work that you've taken on is really incredible. And we are super excited to see what projects you get up to next. So maybe in the future we can get back together and you can share some more, and we'll stay connected through our work with the BCAFN.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today, guys.
Yeah, it's been a true pleasure, Angel. You are just so like positive, and just like even your energy through the screen right now. I'm like, I just feel so much more happier. I'm like, what am I gonna do next? Like, you've inspired me to like, keep seeking opportunities, keep growing, like just keep learning. So yeah, it's been a true honor having you as our first guest, and we hope to have you back again soon to hear about all the exciting things you get up to. And yeah, thanks again.
That just reminded me of that TikTok that I was like, what am I gonna do tomorrow? I don't know what to do. And then Robin Williams is like, how exciting. Like, yeah, just every day is an opportunity to wake up and realize like it's a new opportunity to do something with yourself, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. It made sense at the beginning.
It made sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's a wrap for this podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next podcast, which will be released at the end of February. Stay tuned on our BCAFN Youth Facebook page to find out who our next guest will be. My name is Justen Peters.
And I'm Taylor Behn-Tsakoza, and you're listening to the BC Assembly of First Nations Youth Podcast.